Welcome to today's show. We've got all the top waiver wire pickups to save your fantasy team, though we're getting to the bottom of the pool, it seems a little bit. We'll get you up to speed on latest injuries too. Don't panic. Let's dive into the moves that could help you win your week.
This week is kinda not looking so good in the waiver wires. We're really getting down to the bottom of what we know anyway. We got a lot of unknowns out there, but we'll see about what we know. One of the more interesting things that I wanna talk about before we get into who to pick up on your waiver wires is the upcoming trade deadline for the NFL, which is November 5th. And this could mean a bump for some of the players currently in bad positions, particularly Mike Williams with the New York Jets. He's, sitting with the New York Jets, and now they just brought Devontae Adams in, so his role got demoted even more in that already struggling offense where Aaron Rodgers is blaming everybody but himself for what's wrong. Anyhow, there's been lots of rumors about Mike Williams maybe being traded. And if he ended up with, say, the Kansas City Chiefs or the San Francisco 49ers, who had quite a weekend with injuries, then it could be a big bump for those teams, but particularly him. So if you're looking for somebody to stash and you've got an open spot and you're just like willing to take the risk that he might be vaulted into a better position than where he is right now with the Jets, stick Mike Williams away and grab him on the waiver wires.
That's a really good tip. I might be seeing if Mike Williams is available in our team after some of the injuries this weekend. Luckily, there are no teams on bye this week, though, so don't have to really plan for that. But we do have a couple of upcoming weeks with a lot of teams on bye. I think there's one week where it feels like half of the teams decided to take that off. I don't know
Yeah,
how, but
there
that
is. I think
is
it's week 12
yeah. As
and
I
it's
look
coming.
ahead, it's coming. It's going to be here sooner than you expect. And maybe half of your fantasy team is going to be on bye. So keep that in mind. But
Yeah.
as we switch to start talking about who to start looking to pick up, if you enjoy our podcast, don't forget to hit the subscribe button so that you don't miss a beat and don't miss our free weekly contest.
Yes, for
Let's kick it off
sure.
with wide receivers.
All right, let's see what we've got going on at wide receivers. Well, we're going to talk about the San Francisco 49ers. They have an interesting situation here. And so we've got two that you could consider picking up off of waiver wires. First off, we'll talk about what happened on Sunday, which is the injury to Brandon Ayuk. It appears he tore his ACL in that game. It was kind of ugly. I watched it probably more times than I should have. And then we had Debo Samuel, who played 4 plays, but then left due to illness. And I didn't realize it, but he was even seen pregame taking in oxygen on the sideline and reports of he couldn't breathe, he couldn't catch his breath. So I'm a little concerned there. This isn't just, oh, I've got the stomach flu. It sounds like there's something more going on there. And we don't want to read too much into it. But at the same time, if it's that severe, could he also be out this week?
Especially with congestion in lungs, like, those can sometimes take a while to recover, but we said we weren't gonna read into it, so
Yeah,
if
we won't
they're
read.
gonna be out,
Yeah. If they're both out, even, just the Ayuk injury, it brings into play Jauan Jennings definitely more, and he is 71% available, but he too has an injury and didn't play on Sunday. He has a hip injury. So I really like Jauan Jennings, but he's got to get healthy enough to play. If he doesn't play, then this past weekend we saw for the first week Ricky Pearsall, their rookie, play, and he is 87% available in leagues. And Ricky Pearsall is the one who was shot in preseason just before the season started in that robbery attempt. And it was right at the same time that they were having the whole contract dispute with Ayuk. And so it seemed like Ricky Pearsall was going to be brought in to replace Ayuk, although it was just a couple days before they signed his contract. Anyhow, it's an interesting situation that Ayuk is now out. Ricky Pearsall is just suddenly healthy, and now we get to evaluate if he is going to be able to step up and help them out. We know Jauan Jennings can have a big day. So if you can grab either of these receivers, one of them's going to have to step into a bigger role, or maybe both of them into a bigger role as well. And I love their matchup. So next up, they get Dallas. We've seen teams just walk all over Dallas. Then they have a bye, and then it gets even better because they get to play Tampa Bay.
That does sound pretty good. I I know that San Francisco is struggling a little bit because I mean, also you have Christian McCaffrey still out, so
It's amazing that they're doing as well as they are with all of their injuries. It's kind of
yep.
extensive. So let's move on to the only other wide receiver I really have on my list, and that's Keon Coleman with the Buffalo Bills. And it's kind of funny because I think I actually dropped him a week or two ago, and now I'm going to have to go see if I can find him again because he hadn't been doing a whole lot. The whole Bills offense hadn't been doing a whole lot. And he looks to be 60%, 68% available. Um, the Bills, like I said, just haven't looked great until this week, and they brought in Amari Cooper, and that seemed to just like open up the entire offense. Could be that they were playing Tennessee, but I'm going to assume that, the injection of Amari Cooper into this offense seemed to open up that passing game a little bit. And Josh Allen finally had a good game, and then therefore so did Keon Coleman and Amari Cooper. Both of them had decent days, over 15 fantasy points. They have to go to Seattle this week, but then they get two great matchups with Miami and Indianapolis. And I can't say that Seattle matchup is bad either. I kind of like, that they might be playing a little bit from behind and they might have to pass a little bit more. But then to get Miami and Indy after that, that's just too easy. Um, Amari Cooper only played 35% of the snaps in week 7, and Coleman was playing for 75% of the snaps. We saw Shakir kind of take a little bit of a step back. So we'll see if all three of these wide receivers end up the same. But I feel like Keon Coleman has been making steps each week to be the wide receiver. And he is a rookie. So I guess we should have allowed that it was going to take him a few more weeks than we wanted it to.
I don't think I dropped him because I was trying to I had enough that could play, but I do think that, Keon Coleman is kind of coming into the light. There were a couple of plays where you can see he's kind of trying to give hints to Amari Cooper of, like, "This is the route you're supposed to run," this past weekend, so it's
Oh,
good to
that's
see.
great. Yeah, I like that they have, somebody else that teams have to cover. So, he's definitely another one that's a possibility to pick up. That's all we've got for wide receivers. There's a bunch of other ones that I just don't like, but so those are the only 2 that we're gonna recommend. At running back, I only have 1 running back, and that's Roschon Johnson with the Chicago Bears. He's 85% available in leagues, and he is behind DeAndre Swift, who's been playing awesome, but he still gets a good workload, and he's also involved in the goal line plays, and he's a great pass catcher. So all 3 of those, especially in a PPR league, I like him. He's got great matchups for the next couple weeks. Next up, he's got the Washington Commanders, then the Arizona Cardinals, and the New England Patriots. So all 3 of those should provide lots of running opportunities for the Chicago Bears and therefore give Rashawn Johnson a decent amount of work as well.
Should we go to our favorite position that, we actually have more than some of our other positions this week?
I
Tight
guess
ends?
so. Yeah. I don't know what people are going to start doing for, running backs. Hopefully you've got enough running backs. And then, if you can get a wide receiver, pick up an extra wide receiver for your flex spot, because there are a few additional ones of the wide receivers than running backs. But let's move on to tight ends.
For tight ends, we have one, Hunter Henry, New England. New England's looking better with Drake May, which is helping out. Hunter Henry is 69% available. And I mean, next up they're going against the Jets and then Tennessee and Chicago. This feels like a manageable workload for New England.
I think so. Drake May hasn't won yet, but the passing game looks so much better. And he's getting more consistent. He looked really good in that loss in London to Jacksonville, but still has to improve there, or the defense has got to improve there, one of the two. Hunter Henry has been involved in 75 to 80% of the plays. And the last 2 weeks with Drake Maye at quarterback, he has seen 5 and 9 targets and getting just over 10 fantasy points. So with this year, the way tight ends are struggling, and really all we're expecting anymore is like 8 to 12 points from your tight end. It looks like he's becoming more consistent with Drake Maye at quarterback, and I think worth a pickup if you can get him.
Another one on our list is one that I got to see used a bunch this weekend. Noah Fant for the Seattle Seahawks. He's 70% available. Seattle tends to use him, it seems, maybe not for a touchdown all consistently, but he's been getting 4 to 6 targets in the last 2 weeks.
He has been getting the targets and consistency. And now we've got an injury to DK Metcalf, which is going to give probably Noah Fant a bump in time. We could have listed their wide receivers as well as getting a bump up. The problem there is next up is JSN, Jackson Smith Najigba, or Tyler Lockett. And both of those are over 60% owned from what I looked up. And then up after that is Bobo. And I don't know that I can recommend Bobo. I feel like Noah Fant might get more of the target share that Metcalf. He's obviously not going to get Metcalf's passes, but if one of those other two wide receivers is put thrust into Metcalf's role, then maybe Noah Fant's going to get a little bit more of that short work.
I mean, JSN has to throw the ball to someone, right?
That's
After
true.
getting it tossed from Geno.
I forgot. Yeah, he got to throw that pass to Metcalf. That was a great one.
It was.
And then we'll give you one more tight end just because we can. Tight ends, like I said, we're not expecting a whole lot. So I guess we've got a little bit longer of a list, and that's Grant Calcaterra with the Philadelphia Eagles. And I think he was on our list last week, and he kind of threw up a turd week with 1.5 fantasy points. But Saquon Barkley rushed for over 175 yards in his revenge game against the Giants. So I'm not going to hold this against Calcaterra. Next up, they're at Cincinnati, then Jacksonville, and at Dallas, which are all 3 really great matchups for him. And just because we didn't get that game last week, I kind of like going back to him again here. The only thing that concerns me is Goddard's status, because the only reason that we want to play Grant Calcaterra is if Dallas Goedert is out. And he has that hamstring injury, and he's only missed the 1 game so far. And we know that hamstrings can definitely linger. So we'll have to keep our eye on Goddard's status this week and see if we want to play Calcaterra or not.
What about quarterbacks? Drake Maye?
Yeah, I'm all about Drake Maye, which is really weird to say, but I think he was on our list again last week as well. And he's still 84% available. We saw so many injuries to quarterback this weekend that maybe you are looking for a quarterback now. The quarterbacks had been pretty consistent with just an injury here and there to people that we weren't probably playing. But this past weekend took a few more out that we may have been playing. So Drake Maye has the Jets up next, then Tennessee, and then Chicago. So all decent matchups. I don't like that Chicago one as well, but the other 2 I like pretty well. And this week for week 7, Drake Maye was quarterback 4 for fantasy points. Now that is before the 2 games on Monday night, but still that's up there. We had some really bad performances by quarterbacks this week. And he threw 2 touchdowns and 276 yards in the loss to Jacksonville. He seems to be learning each week and getting better and better.
This was only his 2nd start, wasn't it?
Yeah, it was.
So going into his third start.
Start.
2 touchdowns, 276 yards isn't bad.
It's not. And now he gets to start against the Jets. And the Jets defense last night, they made Russell Wilson look like a capable quarterback, which is a little scary because I'm not a fan of Russell Wilson. I think you know that. And he actually had a decent game and beat them. It was kind of surprising. So I can't imagine what a quarterback that is kind of okay can do against the Jets defense, but I'm gonna have to reconsider the Jets defense and how good I think they actually are.
Yeah, I know we were all questioning the decision to, bench Justin Fields, but last night I think kind
It
of
worked out okay?
worked out
Yeah.
okay. What about kind of on the injury train and quarterbacks stepping in for injured quarterbacks? Jameis Winston for Cleveland, 99% available. I don't think anyone saw Deshaun Watson tearing his Achilles on their bingo card, but
No. And then, they brought in Dorian Thomas Robinson, DTR, and he broke his finger, hurt his finger. I don't know that they know exactly the status of his finger, so they had to bring in Jameis Winston. It how often do you get to go through 3 quarterbacks in a game? But I'm kind of excited to see Jameis Winston. He is kind of a boom or bust, so if you're listening to this and considering Winston, you have to really be in a position where you can take a risk or you're willing to take that risk because he's going to throw it. He's got that big play ability, but he's going to throw interceptions as well. So you have to be on that interception watch. And if you're in one of those leagues that is minus 2 points for an interception, I would not be even considering picking up Jameis Winston because we know that he is going to throw interceptions. I actually did this study one time with my database and wondered if there was an issue with interceptions and the team color. So if you were playing a team of light color, were you more likely to throw an interception? And the only one that came up statistically relevant to do that was Jameis Winston, which is kind of interesting. Anyhow,
oh, that's so weird.
yeah, it is. He was the only one though.
Is there
And
anyone on the Cleveland team that might get an increase that we should also keep an eye on?
yeah, this might be something good for Jerry Judy. They just traded away Amari Cooper, so Jerry Judy was already elevated a little bit and getting more targets, but the increased play ability of Jameis Winston in the downfield may bump up Jerry Judy a little bit. And he might be a little bit safer play than Jameis Winston if you want those big plays, but it's still kind of boom or bust with Jameis Winston.
And then
So
there's one more on our list,
yeah, Tua. I don't know
Tua.
that any of us are really ready for the Dolphins to bring back Tua. He's 55% available. Next up, he's got Arizona, then he's at Buffalo and at the Los Angeles Rams. And if he gets another concussion, I think fans are going to kind of lose it. So we're going to see him coming back. Um, Getting Arizona at home is a really good place to come back and a great opportunity there. My concern is how bad the Dolphins looked on Sunday. They were just horrible against the Colts, and they too had another injury to a quarterback there. So Tyler Huntley went out with a shoulder injury and turned it over to Tim Boyle. And I know that was bad, but Tyreek Hill and Waddle combined for 0 targets during the first half of that game. And then they finished the game with 4 targets and a catch each. They each had 2 targets and 1 catch each. And that was just awful. I could not understand why they didn't seem to even be trying to win the game. They were in it till the very end, but it didn't seem like anybody wanted to win that game. It was just who can lose this game. So my concern is they don't really want to win. I don't understand how you cannot try to get the ball in Tyreek Hill's hands, even if you're running it. And they were running pretty successfully during that game with Achan and Mostert, and they just did nothing with their wide receivers. They did use their tight end. Genu Smith had a really good game. Didn't want to throw him in on the tight ends because I just don't know that we can count on that. I know they pulled it back and they were playing a shorter game, but why can't you play a somewhat shorter game with Tyreek Hill or Jalen Waddle? I saw Waddle also went out with some kind of injury for a little while anyway, as well. So this one's hard. I mean, you can stash him away. He's definitely the best quarterback on this list, but I don't know what's going on in Miami.
Well, and one of the Miami players was wearing the Guardian cap this weekend, right?
He was, yeah. Devon Achane was wearing the Guardian cap. So he was
I kinda hope
coming off that concussion, and why not give it a chance? Yeah, hopefully we'll see
we see
Tua
his
with it.
name. Yeah.
Yeah. You would almost
I
think they would require it.
I have been amazed we haven't seen more of it throughout the season, and I I'm just curious because I know we saw it at the beginning of the season for 1 or 2 players, but we regularly have seen
Yeah,
concussions every week,
we have.
so
Although I don't think we had any this week. That's kind of odd. We had
it
other
is.
injuries. Um, let's move on to defenses. We got a couple streaming defensive options. The Texans are 52% available. Next up, they get the Indianapolis Colts, and they're playing in Houston, so they get that game at home. Anthony Richardson looked just awful on Sunday. He had a 48.5% completion rate. He's had 6 interceptions in 5 games, and he just didn't look like he knew what he was doing. The Texans lost in the final seconds to Green Bay. That was a tough loss for them. But the defense had 2 interceptions on Jordan Love and a couple sacks as well, and they're playing well. So, given the the situation and the opponent, I really like that they get the Colts. Next up, they go to the New York Jets, and that should be a decent matchup too. If Aaron Rodgers is going to keep throwing interceptions, they should have a good game there. After that, you need to dump them because they host Detroit. We don't want that game. The other defensive option for streaming this week is the Los Angeles Chargers, and they're 60% available. They have 3 really good upcoming matches. So this is a defense that you can actually pick up this week and play it the next 3 weeks. Next up, they get the New Orleans Saints, and we don't know if Derek Carr is going to start, or Spencer Rattler, who also got hurt, or somebody else. But I like this matchup regardless of who's quarterback for the New Orleans Saints. After that, they get the Cleveland Browns. That is in Cleveland, but still, if it's Jameis Winston, it, they're going to have interception opportunities. And then after that, they get Tennessee, who again is struggling at quarterback as well. So this just seems too good to pass up and try to pick up the Chargers defense.
I'm kinda curious if this past weekend was a higher than normal number of interceptions. I felt like I saw a lot of interceptions, and maybe it just I they happened so quickly and so similarly timed that it feels like there were more than there actually were.
There were a lot of interceptions this week, and in general, I think we only had like 2 games go on the over. I know we had seen a lot of really high point totals when we were reviewing the games last week, and they just weren't hitting there, and neither were the fantasy points either. Usually we were seeing a few in the 30s, even occasionally, somebody hitting the 40s for fantasy points for the week. And this week, it wasn't there. It was very low and a lot in the 20s, a lot even below that. I didn't sort through it, but there were like 12 quarterbacks below 10 fantasy points. Now, some of that comes from the injuries and somebody taking over, and I didn't like line them up and sort through the teams, but still, I think Kirk Cousins was at 10 points, and we didn't expect that at all.
Nope. Not when the game was supposed to be over 50 points.
But yeah, we didn't.
But let's chat injury.
The injuries, yeah, let's run through the injuries real quick. We'll just mention them in case you haven't already heard about them. Jaden Daniels with the Commanders had a rib injury. He says he's fine. He'll play this week. He did leave the game, but it was already 27-0. Washington, who doesn't have a defense, just shut down the Carolina Panthers, which is kind of interesting. I thought that was going to be a higher scoring game, and it turned out not to be. So we think we'll see Jaden Daniels this week, but if not, you'll have to have that backup quarterback ready. I got caught playing him, and I'm probably losing my matchup. It sucks when your player goes out during the game and you lose your matchup because of that. Another quarterback, Spencer Rattler, with the New Orleans Saints. He has a hip injury, but he's kind of played bad. No one really knows if he got pulled because he was playing bad or if he was injured. So we'll keep him on the injury report. I think we'll see Derek Carr back this week. Otherwise, it's going to be some really bad football. Deshaun Watson tore his Achilles. We talked about him. He's gone for the season. Aiden O'Connell for the Raiders broke his thumb, and he's out 6 weeks. So I think we're going to see more Gardner Minshew, which isn't really an improvement. It's about the same, though. The Raiders will continue to struggle with Gardner Minshew. And then Tyler Huntley, Miami Dolphins, quarterback for the Miami Dolphins. He also got hurt. I think that was a shoulder injury, but we expect Tua back this week. So we'll see. Otherwise, he'll turn it over to Tim Boyle. And then
we have a couple of knee injuries on wide receivers.
the wide receivers. Brandon Ayuk is out for the season, it looks like, with an ACL tear. Then we had DK Metcalf with an MCL and probably an MCL sprain and probably out 3 to 4 weeks. Rashid Shaheed for the New Orleans Saints. He tore his meniscus and had knee surgery last week, and he's out for the season. And then Curtis Samuel for the Buffalo Bills had a shoulder injury that kind of like jammed his elbow down, and he may be out multiple weeks as well. We're still waiting to hear on that one.
Largely around wide receivers and quarterbacks, not too many other injuries this week, which kind of lucky since our list was not very long for anything other than tight ends and
it is
quarterbacks, kind of.
Yeah, since we didn't have any running backs really to pick up, I'm glad that we didn't see the injuries, and we saw some of the running backs returning this week with Brian Robinson Jr. returning for the Commanders, and he had a really good game. And then I was really, really surprised how well Detroit ran against the Minnesota Vikings with both Montgomery and Gibbs. That was a big surprise for me.
They were both equally worth a lot of fantasy points.
They were. It was a great game.
It was very surprising. They're probably taken. Sorry, all.
Oh,
but
yeah.
if you magically find someone trying to trade you to give you one of those, accept the trade. That seems like a no-brainer usually.
That's a great point, Lauren, though. I mean, because we are getting to the bottom of the barrel here on our player pool, you should be looking at trades. So if you do have injuries in certain positions, but you're stronger on an opposing position, look to trade. I hate that people aren't responding to trades. I feel like you have to harass the members in your league to get a trade done. I made 3 trades. I made one in each of 3 leagues, and one person declined it and the other 2 didn't even respond. So I probably need to go back to them and send a personalized email and not depend on the email that comes from the system, or text them and go, "Hey, I'm trying to make your team and my team better. Can you at least respond?" Nobody even counters either. It's like they'll deny it or they won't respond to it, but they don't go, "Well, I would take that player instead of the one you offered." Anyhow.
And if you're listening and you're not sure, and you're like me and you're not sure if you have any outstanding trades, in ESPN, if you go to the pending moves, where it says pending moves, that's where it will show you. Because I definitely was one of those people that didn't notice someone was trying to trade, and yeah.
Yeah, it shows right up where, and in the NFL app, where you see your pending waiver wire moves. So after you input your waiver wire request, you'll see those listed there, and you'll see any trades that are pending as well right in that same area.
Well, good luck to our listeners. Try to make a trade this week because it's definitely slim pickings. Maybe you'll get lucky on your waiver wire, but look to make trades. And we'll see you next time for our discussion on the games and sitting and starting players.